So let's take a look now at some of the best known ancient goddesses that are associated with the moon. Certainly Ishtar is a goddess that, was huge throughout all of the Mediterranean area, Sumer, Babylon, Nineveh, throughout the Levant, the area where the Hebrews were. And we see right above her head, she's both lunar and solar, but we see this moon, and her symbols were the crescent moon and the star. And so actually, interesting enough, these are the symbols of that the Muslim faith has taken on today. But we see the tree of life coming out from her body. She's holding the tree. This is the flower of life here. And we see the symbol for, looks like for Nibiru, the planet that she's from here. And then we see the symbol for Earth here. It's the points of that you have to actually count. So very interesting. And we're going to see pictures of, in the Levant, she was known as a nymph. And many times she had these animals around her. She was considered the daughter principle in her era. And this would have been thousands of years ago. Now, another goddess that you may or may not have ever heard of that I really love is Epona. Epona and Rhiannon are both Celtic goddesses, and they are also associated with the white horse and the moon, both of them. It could be that they're two names for the same goddess in different cultures, Irish and English, or it could be that they were two separate goddesses. But there's a great story about, you can see here's the owl, the white horse, and the oceans, of course, because, of course, England and Ireland and Scotland, they're island cultures. So Rhiannon has a very great story. I love her story. It's very deep. The story is that there was a prince, and this prince went out hawking with his whole retinue and so forth, and he saw this beautiful lady on a white horse at the edge of the forest, and he sent two people to go and get her. Well, after quite some time, they came back and they said, "Sire, no matter how hard we rode, we could never catch her." So the next day, they came back. Once again, it repeated, and he sent even more men. They came back. We couldn't catch her. By the third day, he said, "I'm going to, go after her myself." So he, in fact, did go after her. And as he was chasing her through the forest on her white horse, on his horse, once again, he could never catch her. And so finally he called out, "Lady, will you stop?" And she stopped her horse, and she said, "You only had to ask." And so, isn't that just like us, It's like, if the man would just ask us, we'd be happy to help, we only had to ask. And so they spent the day together in the forest, and they fell madly in love. And she explained that she was from a race called the Tuatha De Danann, who were the people of Danu. They were the shining ones. They were like the elfin people, very long-lived. And that she had been forced to be betrothed to somebody she didn't love, and she was going to have to marry him unless someone intervened. And so, of course, he was like, "Well, I want to marry you." She said, "Well, I can't just stay, and you marry me. You actually have to win my hand." And so she told him that a day in our world was a year in their world. And so I think that's how it goes, or maybe it was the other way around. But anyway, he wound up having to make a plan with her, and sure enough, he appeared a year later, as she told him, dressed kind of as a beggar, but he was a great archer, and he wound up going through the crack between the worlds into the Tuatha De Danann's world, and he came when there was this great, wedding about to happen, and the bridegroom, who was quite a braggart and an egomaniac, I think of him like an elfin Bubba, but he wound up saying, "Whoever wins the archery contest, I will grant them a wish. No matter what their wish is, I'll grant it." So, of course, the king had to win the archery match, and his wish was that he would take Rhiannon as a bride. And of course, as you can imagine, the fairy prince was pretty angry. And so the story is they came back and they were together, and they wound up having a child, and their story continues. The child was actually kidnapped and stolen by the fairy prince, and she was blamed for having killed the child, which of course she didn't. And about 7 or 8 years later, a farmer came with the child that he had found as an infant in his manger. And of course, they realized this was their child because he looked just like them, and everything was restored to her. But her story is about love and perseverance and loyalty, and about not letting the 7-year travail of life weigh you down, because during that 7 years, when she was accused of murdering her own child, she became the white horse, and she carried the burdens back and forth for the people like a beast of burden to the river. And that was the penance, because they wanted to kill her, and the kingdom did. And of course, her love would not allow that to happen. So there are many stories. Rhiannon's a very interesting goddess, but we look at what they learned and what they represented. And she represents loyalty, love, perseverance, endurance through all obstacles, and then coming out on the other side well. In Rome and Greece, there was Demeter and then her daughter Persephone. And of course, most of us know Persephone's story. She was the one that was out picking flowers in the springtime, and the earth opened up, and Hades came in his chariot with 12 black horses and scooped her up and took her down to the underworld. And her mother, of course, didn't know where she'd gone and couldn't find her, and became grief-stricken. And eventually she discovered, of course, she was in the underworld, and she insisted she be released. But the story was that because she had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, the gods that didn't want to anger Hades declared that she would have to remain in the underworld 6 months of the year, and then she could come back 6 months of the year. And of course, the mundane explanation of this is, this is how our ancestors told the story about spring and summer when she returns to the earth, and fall and winter when she goes into the underground. And her mother, the earth goddess Demeter, either celebrates, and everything is rich with fecundity, or is in grief. And that is the easiest mundane explanation of something that is a great spiritual mystery. But the deeper explanation of Persephone's story was really woven into the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. And in those mysteries, Persephone's secret name is Core, C-O-R-E. You saw that earlier on the moon chart. And Core is the kernel or the grain of corn that falls from the tree of life, in other words, us, who has to come down into the lower worlds to experience all the travail that life offers us. So half the time, she's in the higher worlds of light with God the Mother, the goddess, and half the time she's down here in the earthly plane, going through all the shadow realms that we all go through, with all the challenges, the many challenges that we have down here. So Persephone, or Core, is really a symbolic representation of you and me, of us, of the journey that we take. Half the time between lifetimes, we're in the higher worlds, where we're reconnected with our soul family, with the awareness of who we truly are, and with the divine God, goddess, all that is. And then half the time we're down here in the shadows going, what the heck does all this mean? So these are very deep mysteries, but Persephone becomes consequently an advocate for helping souls that are trapped in the lower worlds, because she brings that light with her, and she becomes a healing presence. You can see the moon here. This is Rhea in Roman mythology, also thought of as, Juno. Yemaye, this is in the African traditions. She's the goddess of the oceans. Again, that connection with water. Serena, or La Luna. Again, the moon is called La Luna in some cultures. Koteku in the Mayan culture. Hathor in Egypt. And we see here what looks like the horns of a cow with either the sun or the moon here. And Hathor, again, has both qualities. She's more lunar and then she is solar. But later, Isis was to take the same headdress. Now, Hathor was a goddess. She was probably in the Sumerian, she was probably Ninharsag, the mother, the chief medical officer who was the mother to humanity. But in Egypt, she was beloved and thought of as Hathor. Now, Hathor is the cosmic cow. And as we're going to discover in our next module, the cow happens to be one of about 20 symbols of the Divine Mother. Why? Because from cows, they said we get the milk and honey of the universe. So the galaxy, this is why it's called the Milky Way, the mother's milk. So Hathor's temples worked with healing. They work with light and sound, what we think of as like Tibetan bowls or crystal bowls. They charge the water in the temples with their hands through sending color into the energy. So they really became sort of like psychologists, therapists, sound healers. Also, there's an incredible astronomical clock of the great ages in the temple of Dendera, which was Hathor's temple. Now, here's also a very beautiful image of that crescent moon and sun. And we have to remember that this is not only Hathor's headdress, and Isis got this headdress later, but this is also one of Ishtar's symbols, but kind of turned to the side. And this was all, again, the marriage between the lunar and the solar, talking about mastery. These are hermetic symbols that indicate mastery. Now, this is a really beautiful picture by my friend Lisa Iris, an incredible artist of Isis, the Great Mother. She's done some incredible images of both gods and goddesses, and in this, of course, she's wearing the Hathor headdress. This is, again, who was Isis? Well, there's so much we can say about her. We could spend the whole 6 presentations on Isis alone, because she was the original mother. And here's Isis, and here's Horus, her son. And of course, afterwards, it becomes this version. And then this is the version most of us know today. And see, Mary is wearing the Isis blue, if you notice. So she was a healer. She was a mother. She was a wife. She was a widow when her husband was murdered. She was a queen. She was a civilization maker. She was an herbalist. She was a magician, the mistress of magic. She was just incredible. She was the original queen of heaven, mother of earth. Now, these are some of the symbols that are her symbols that Mary inherited. The solar nimbus, we see that, and we saw that Isis had the moon at her feet, the crown of stars, the fleur-de-lis. For those of you who don't know, this is a fleur-de-lis, and we see literally Mary holding the fleur-de-lis as a lily, as a staff, just as Isis held it literally as a staff of queenship. The white dove connected always with the goddess and the Holy Spirit, the mother and child, the blue cloak, and we see blue and red. And many times you see this with Mary Magdalene as well. The blue is Isis blue. The red has to do with the ancient expressions of the Divine Mother. Our ancestors actually painted the goddess figurines with ochre red, even 200,000 years ago. And we have evidence of this as we come forward 20,000, 30,000, 15,000, 4,000, 1,600 years ago. We literally have found this. And so and I wore red today, by the way, in celebration of her. The classic colors of the goddess are the maiden, the mother, the crone, white, red, and black. But this Isis blue is really important, and we're going to be tracking the red and the blue through this whole presentation. The 2 columns, of course, and then the 4 columns. We see the Isis blue here, cloaked, veiled Isis, and here we see the stars and the solar nimbus. This is a stained glass window. Here we have Mary Isis, and here is Isis. The 2 columns, Here's a beehive. We're going to be discovering what that means in the Book of Knowledge. All this is going to be in section 2. The triangle, once again, we see the J and the B of the 2 columns, the crown of stars, the pendants. We're going to decode all this, the mirror. All of these things have meaning. So here again we have Isis and Horus, and here's Mary and Jesus. So this was the archetype. And this is Yashoda and Krishna. So I want to just make clear that there have been these other amazing incarnations of avatars that have come into the world. Krishna, as you know, is over in the east, thought to be an incarnation of Vishnu and the creator. And so this is his mother, Yashoda, and this is Vishnu. And here, of course, is that Isis blue, the blue and the red. So blue, red, gold, just absolutely beautiful. Now, one of Isis's names was also Ahu. Most people don't know this. It meant high dove. And we know that the dove has been associated with Mary and with Jesus and the Christ lineage. Again and again and again, we see Mary standing on the world here with the child in the Isis blue, with the gold and the red, and the dove is coming down. And here we see Isis with the crown over her head. This is, believe it or not, not Mary and Jesus. This is the Rosicrucian temple, and this is Isis. Once again, the 2 columns, the Isis blue, the red. And these columns all have meaning, not just the 2 columns, but the 4 columns and the 6 columns. They have a deeper hermetic significance that we'll probably be getting into in the next time. This is Diana Artemis. I love her. She's just really wonderful. Maybe because I love trees and I love the forest. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up across from a great forest, and so I love the animals. I love the nature itself. And Diana Artemis, Greek and Roman, 2 different names for the same goddess, lived in the forest with women, there she was a goddess of the trees and of the forest and of fresh springs, of waters, and she was also a goddess of chastity. In this case, she was a virgin goddess, meaning she chose not to marry. Goddess of the hunt, of the moon, nature, and animals. In the Greek cosmology or mythology, however you care to look at it, she was the daughter of Zeus and Leto and the twin sister of Apollo. As soon as Artemis was born, she helped her mother give birth to her brother, thereby becoming the protector of childbirth and labor. So she was very much a defender of women's rights. And I think she's very much out now with the Me Too movement. I think a lot of these women, they're certainly not militant. But they are saying we have got to protect ourselves. Now, she was a protector of animals. So normally when we think of men going hunting with the bow and arrow, they're out there killing the animals. This is the opposite for Diana. She was actually a protector. And there's a story about her that she and her women were bathing in this beautiful creek, like a pool, a lake, inside the forest. And there was a peeping Tom that was hiding in the bushes watching them. And when she discovered him, she turned him into a stag, and she actually hunted him down and she shot him. And so although she's a protector of the stag, the symbol of the stag also became a symbol of the fact that when men overstep their boundaries with women sexually, which, as we all know, this seems to have been going on for probably forever, but definitely for the last 2,000 years in a big way, maybe 3,000. And finally, women have enough of a voice, because finally we can vote. You know, we only gained the right to vote in America in 1922, and I think France and England only got the vote after World War II in the late 1940s. And so now we have a voice, and we can stand up for ourselves. But I love these images of her, and you'll see her with the moon a lot at night, hunting at night. But you can see here that Bambi is her friend. You know, she only hunts them down if they're peeping toms. Now, Diana was really loved, really, really beloved by the people. And her temple was one of the 7 wonders of the world. Now, there were these statues of Diana. You could see from these other pictures she was a hot babe, but in these statues she has many different breasts. It's not because she really had all these breasts. This is a hermetic symbol to say, you know, look, I provide the milk and the honey for all of humanity. Come suckle at my breast. You know, I will give you what you need to sustain you. And so whenever you see these things, you know, our culture doesn't think hermetically. We're starting to use symbols again because of the computer, but they're exoteric symbols that direct us to, you know, save our work or to, you know, go to this website or that website. But the Hermetics is an esoteric symbol language that's talking about something much deeper. And so, you know, I'm a student of Hermetics and a teacher of it. And so this is actually the ruins, a painting, a part of the ruins of one of Diana's temples. This was actually the temple of Diana. Look at the scale and the majesty of this temple. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And here again, we see the scale. These are gigantic chariots. Look at how huge this is. Just incredible. Now, this was largely destroyed around 400 AD by the Theodosian decrees. This is when Pope Theodosius declared that basically any temple that was not Christian would either be taken over or torn down and destroyed. And it was a great loss to humanity when that happened, in my opinion, because these were absolutely not only energy vortexes, but they were architectural marvels. And today, these are the ruins of what's left, which you can see is just, you know, still magnificent, but paltry next to what once existed.